Hey folks, Randy Newberg here with another episode of Leupold's Hunt Talk Radio. It is 2026, which means it's the off season or off year election season. And, in the past, you guys have seen that I've had statewide candidates for Montana from the left and the right, and sometimes some cancel, some don't want to do it, whatever. This year in Montana, we have an interesting thing where we have a very legitimate candidate for our U.S. Senate seat competing against a Republican and a Democrat. And we have, not in my district, but the district in eastern Montana, we have an independent candidate there running for against Republicans and Democrats. So you have heard me say many times that I am the party of hunting, fishing, and public land. You know my frustration of political process because I go back to D.C. way too much, and it is broken. You've heard time and time again about this broken system. So a few months ago, I learned about a guy, and he's going to be our guest today, Seth Bodnar, who is the independent candidate for U.S. Senate. And I've been doing a lot of research on him. Went to an event that he had and then got invited to a fundraiser, and I didn't feel that I could go there without making a donation. So I made my second political donation of my lifetime, just because I wanted to stand in the back and listen and see how he talked when he was talking to people he knew were potential donors, because that's a different discussion usually than what you get when you're just at a public meeting. And so then I met with him to talk about a lot of our issues. And I thought, you know what? I should have him on the podcast and let him tell them, rather than me tell what he's thinking. He can tell y'all what he's thinking. And I'm going to try to seek out as many independent candidates as I can. I am just frustrated that a country with such amazing potential that the United States has been hijacked by the two-party system. And maybe I'm wrong in that, but I think a lot of you are feeling the same way, because we get a lot of the same comments from a lot of you of, I don't think I have a party anymore, or the system's broken, or, all kinds of, we've heard all the comments, right? So I asked him, I said, you want to come on this podcast and tell this audience what you're thinking? And yeah, we're going to focus mostly on public lands, conservation, hunting. We're not going to get into all the issues of, whatever it is, immigration and abortion and the other things that seem to make up a lot of the public argument. And I also want to hear his case about why he thinks an independent candidate can work, why they have a chance to actually get elected, and what their ability would be to actually govern or be a change maker if you were one of 100 U.S. senators. So we'll see how it goes. I appreciate y'all listening. I hope that you'll listen to it and think about this fall. And my only call to action to anybody is vote. And I don't care if you vote left, right, independent, but vote, and vote your principles. Please don't vote just because, this is my peer pressure of this, or my social group, we do this or do that. Voting is really, really important. And this year, hey, maybe there's an option. Well, there is an option there, and I'm hoping that it becomes a viable option that gives us a chance to be independent in how we think and how we vote. So anyhow, appreciate y'all being here, and we'll see where this discussion goes. Seth Bodnar, candidate for U.S. Senate from Montana, running as an independent. In about 2 seconds, we're going to flip it over, and he's going to come in here and sit in that chair right there. Seth Bodnar. candidate for United States Senate. Independent candidate.
Independent. Yep.
All right. Is that all we got to say about you? We're done?
We're done. No, we know one thing. You know who my boss is.
Yeah.
Well, you.
So this is going to be really interesting for me because a lot of this audience knows that I'm the anti-party. I used to say I was party agnostic and that I was the party of hunting and fishing in public lands. And I'm just the anti-party.
Yeah.
So when I saw your name pop up as, I'm going to throw my name in the hat, I'm like, boy, this guy, I wonder how he's wired to think this
Maybe
is
just crazy.
Yeah, to think this is right. So what's your story? How did you get to the decision? And you can start back as far as you want.
Well, look, you're not alone in being anti-party, right? We're celebrating 250 years of this country.
Yeah.
And you look at the folks who did that, right? Our George Washington, our first president,
right?
Our only independent president,
right? He warned us.
He warned us, absolutely. Yeah. His farewell address, right, which is the moment when a person really says what they mean on their way out the door, right? He talked about what he called the baneful effects of the spirit of party.
Yeah.
And he talked about this idea of partisan factions and the potential for those factions to create in Americans a spirit of revenge that could drive the importance of party to be higher than the importance of country. Yeah. And he said that spirit of revenge, that spirit of party could allow unprincipled, ambitious, dishonest men to usurp the will of the people and take control of the reins of government.
Yeah.
He predicted this.
Yeah, in 1790 probably.
Yep, exactly. And and so he predicted where we are, right? And when I say this, it's rank partisanship. You know, this idea that the two-party system just demands blind allegiance to your party, whether it's good for the country or not. And so what got me to here? At the age of 18, I swore an oath to the country. I swore an oath to the United States of America to support and defend our Constitution, not a party. And I just see our politics right now and our political leaders, they're spending more time working to divide us, to distract us. Right. We have political leaders now who don't just fail to quell or calm the fires of division. They bring the gasoline. Yeah. And they do it strategically. They do it intentionally because an angry electorate, a divided electorate, is easier to control. Yeah. And our founders knew that. Yeah. Right. Our founders threw off, a monarchy. They threw off this control, and that idea of freedom is what we're celebrating 250 years of. And so I'm asking Montanans to make their own Declaration of Independence here 250 years later.
Oh, well, I like the way you put that. Our own Declaration of Independence, because one of the things, and I fell in this camp for a long time. I would say I was independent, but I had biases. And if I looked at, I'm a CPA, I'm kind of a small government, low tax guy, like my guns and my hunting and stuff, I found myself with only two options, very often going to the right. Not always. I mean, my wife said my ballots look like when you take a multiple choice test in school and you say, well, there can't be three answers that are B in a row. Yeah, exactly. I better make this a C.
Yeah, just bet on C, man.
Yeah. And
when you don't know, C is a good answer.
She said to some degree my ballot looks like I'm taking a multiple choice exam.
Because you're a thoughtful guy.
I try to be, but I always said I was an independent, and I tried to act that way, but I know all of us have our own biases, and when we're only given the binary choice, we end up probably having some tendencies. And will people, and I think what interests me about your campaign is, will Montanans who historically, in the 35 plus years I've lived here, we were kind of purple more than red or blue.
Yeah.
Will Montanans say, I am independent? Because isn't there a breakdown of what percentage of the Montana electorate? Like 40% of us or
nationally, recent Gallup survey found 47% of Americans
So
are
they're
independent.
independent.
And it's about 25% for each of the parties. And here in Montana, Crown of the Continent survey done by an institute actually over at the university was actually about conservation. Good news about that survey is 90% of Montanans think conservation is a top priority.
Yeah.
Even if our elected leaders don't always reflect that, Montanans feel that. That's
Yeah.
one of the reasons I'm running. We'll get to later. But that same survey asked for self-identification of party because we don't have party registration
Right.
here. So you can look at past elections and how people voted, and you assume their party affiliation based on that voting. But when you ask them, this survey found 33% said Republican, 25% said Democrat, 42% said independent.
Wow.
And now people say, oh, they don't vote that way. Well, they haven't had an option. So let's give them an option
Yeah,
to vote that
pretty
way.
hard to vote independently on their
Because it's hard to get on the
candidates,
ballot.
so,
And we had to go around last 3.5
What is
months.
it? What did it? I read a news clip. I tried to do a little bit of background, and be a little bit informed. And you and I was at some of your meetings, just listening and taking notes. But you had to get like 13,000 signatures to get on the ballot.
Yeah, 13,327. That's to be precise.
About.
Yeah, right, that number. And I have ingrained into my head. And look, we went around every corner of the state and collected right around 29,000 signatures.
Wow.
And from 52 different counties of Montanans who say, look, I'm ready to declare my independence here to get you on the ballot. We need more options.
Right.
Over 20,000 of those were already validated by the county offices. And you could say, oh, that's a hassle. Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
But honestly, I was okay with that.
Right.
Because it got us out there talking with people.
Exactly. I think I was reading this piece the Wall Street Journal had. I think it was the Wall Street Journal. This election cycle has it has more independent candidates running for Congress than ever. Congress and governor races. And they talked about how low the thresholds are in some states.
Yeah, some it's like 1,000 signatures or 500.
Yeah. I could probably just email my CPA client list and get on the ballot in those states.
Yeah.
But I think that's worthwhile that Montana has a higher threshold.
Yeah.
I see that we have a House candidate for District 2 for
Dr.
Congress.
Eisenhower. Yeah.
Dr. Eisenhower is an independent candidate there.
Yeah.
We don't have one for the House race in
the Western District.
In District 1. But so a lot of people say, well, if you're an independent, you're just going to, they're going to go back to when I was just out of college in Ross Perot. Everyone says that's why Bill Clinton won, because Ross Perot split the vote with George Bush. And, well, Ross Perot did pretty darn good. Yeah. And if he hadn't pulled out and then tried to get back in, he would have got some electoral votes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
he was actually leading in the polls in June.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
And then by October, gets back in. Saturday Night Live skits all about that.
Yeah.
If I'm in, I'm out. I'm in, I'm out.
Yeah.
But absolutely. And look, Montanans are hungry for something different. The approval rate of Congress right now is 10%.
10?
Yeah.
Well, that's higher than I thought.
Well,
I thought
exactly.
It'd be single
My
digit.
question is, who the heck's that 10%, right? Who are the people who are like, these guys are doing a bang-up job, right?
Yeah.
Deficits soaring, just piling debt, can't get a farm bill passed, can't do anything, and these guys are bang-up job. No. Yeah. But I've said to people, look, if you're in that 10%, I'm probably not your guy. If I'm elected, I'm going to work just as hard for you as I will for my strongest supporters. I'll guarantee you that, but I'm probably not your guy.
Yeah.
But if you're in the 90, why don't you take a look at something different? Because what's the definition of insanity?
Yeah, trying the same thing.
Expecting different results.
Yeah.
So we've got to try some different things, because by any measure, this country's headed in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
We're on track to hand over our country to our kids, and I got 3 kids growing up in this state. Yeah. And they're the 6th generation in their family to grow up here. Yeah. I want there to be a 7th and an 8th that grows up here in Montana. And we're on track to hand off a country to them that's less prosperous, that's less secure, that's more divided, that's more in debt than the country we grew up in. Think about that. Our national debt is $39 trillion. We spend more paying the interest on our debt than we do on national defense.
Yeah.
just the
And
interest.
there's no domestic program that we
Yeah.
spend as much on as we do on interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you look at, we haven't passed a farm bill since 2018.
Yeah.
We're 3 years late. You know, that homework assignment, right? If
Yeah.
maybe a dock a grade for every year that you're late, they're getting a D on
Yeah.
that one because, and yet farmers are struggling in Montana.
Yeah.
You know, farm bankruptcies in the United States last year were up 46% versus the year before.
Wow.
We're a net importer of food today. We used to pride ourselves on Montana's farmers and ranchers feeding the world. Now we import food to the tune of about $50 billion.
Wow.
And if you think like I do that food security is an important element of national security, that should concern you.
Right.
And why are we not doing everything we can to get a farm bill passed to support our farmers, our ranchers, all of our ag producers with common sense trade policy, with regulatory stability so they can invest. Herds in this country at a 75-year low, cattle herds. And prices are high right now, but that's worrisome.
Yeah, when the input costs are so high, the profit margin to the producer is not very
I was
high.
talking to a rancher last night actually, and we were kind of both lamenting. You go to Costco, you go wherever, and it was my 15-year-old's like, oh, we're gonna make some steaks because he prides himself on his steak cooking abilities. Yeah. When I cook steak, he comes down and just criticizes, which is what 15-year-old boys do of their dads, which is fine. But he's actually pretty good, I will admit. I think he is better than I am at cooking steak. But he wants to go get that steak, and you get 3 steaks, $70. Yeah. And he's thinking, holy cow. And he puts that in there. I'm thinking, buddy, did you look at that price? Yeah. Because, by the way, I'm unemployed right now. Right. But he was talking to this rancher last night. You got $19 a pound for T-bones. He said the rancher's getting $2.50.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just selling into a commodity market. We don't, and so that's a risky situation. Yeah. Not just for our ranchers who we need to support, but for American food security, American national security.
Right. Yeah, and I don't know if there's any Montanans. Well, there's probably a few, but pretty much every Montanan I talk to wants working ag lands to stay as working ag lands. Because if you live where I do here in the Gallatin Valley, you drive by and it just breaks your heart to see how many former working lands are now subdivisions and commercial developments. And it's like, whatever we have to do to keep those people working as working landowners.
Well, that's my question. Why are we making it so hard on them? Yeah. Why are we making it so hard on small family farms and ranches to operate? Because you can talk about policy, but you can talk about what's happening to rural Montana right now. Yeah. You look at Medicaid cuts, Medicaid changes, right? Rural hospitals. You see these Medicaid cuts that are coming. Those rural hospitals they're already on the financial brink. They're at risk of closing. Yeah. We have so devalued, and I'm the son of 2 public school teachers, so public education is vitally important to me. It is the engine of social mobility and opportunity in this country. It's the great leveling of the playing field is public education, quality public education. We have many of our rural schools have a 30 to 40% shortage of qualified teachers. Yeah. Because we're not paying them enough to be able to live in those communities. Right. Some of our schools in rural eastern Montana, a quarter of the teachers are migrant workers from the Philippines. And God bless the Filipino teachers who are willing to come and teach our kids. Mm-hmm. But what's it say about us? And if you think about a family trying to take over, the farming operation or the ranch, it's hard enough economically. Right. But when there's nowhere to get health care within 2 hours. Right. There's nowhere to send your kid to school. And there's people in rural Montana who are working their tails off to hold this thing together. And my question is, why are we making it so hard on them? Right. Why aren't we supporting them? Yeah. And I think we need a senator that stands up every single day and fights to maintain and make the Montana way of life a reality again. Yeah.
So you said that when you were 18, you took an oath to the Constitution of the United States. Mm-hmm. Tell the audience a little background about what that was and how that got you to where you are today.
Yeah, well, that was a decision to go to West Point for college. In part because again, I had a great childhood. Parents were, like I said, public school teachers. Even back then, you started to look at college costs. Like, ooh, this is steep. West Point's pretty good option. One, it's free, but 2, more importantly, it's important to serve. You get a holistic education. Now, West Point was a shock to me when I got there. It was not, didn't come from a military background, didn't necessarily know what I was getting myself into. And in fact, I used to tell our students at the University of Montana every year on the first day of when they came, I said, look, it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel nervous about what's happening. Mm-hmm. I said, honestly, I remember only two things about my first day of college. And one is that they taught me the definition of leadership. West Point is fundamentally a leadership academy.
Right.
And the mission is to build leaders of character for a lifetime of service to the nation. Yeah. And that gets drilled into you again and again. The other thing I remember, which is a little weird thing to remember, is that they give you a tuberculosis test. They give you a little, prick in your arm, and you think, well, that's a weird thing to remember.
Yeah.
Well, I remember that because I remember distinctly laying in bed that night and saying a prayer to say, oh, God, please let that test come back positive when I check in a couple of days so I can go home. Because I did not really know what I was getting myself into, and I hated it at first. It was rough. And but you know what?
That comes with, a 5 or 6 year obligation afterwards?
5 years of active duty. And I stayed on active duty 10 years. I served 101st Airborne Division, and went and became a Green Beret, served in the 1st Special Forces Group. Actually got the opportunity to go back and teach at West Point, taught economics to cadets. So it was look, the Army opened opportunities for me that I never would have. It was and it taught me a lot about myself, a lot about leadership, and the importance of a leader to serve the people that they're leading. And that still informs how I think about it today.
Yeah. So all that leads you to Montana. Mm-hmm. Married 3, did you tell me?
3 kiddos,
3 teenagers?
Yeah, well, 2 15-year-olds. It'll be 16 in a few weeks here, and a little 12-year-old. So I've got, two rising juniors in high school and a soon-to-be 7th grader, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. Life flies, as they say. People tell you that when you have little kids. Oh, they'll be grown in a flash. And you think, oh. Then you're like, oh, yeah, they were right.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring that up is that makes you a little bit unique in the world of political candidates. Not all, but most. Most people wait until they're empty nesters.
Yeah.
And I'm an empty nester, and I have been now for 15 years or 18 years. And you have a lot more breathing room, if you want to call it that, a lot more financial elasticity with both your finances and your time. And I sometimes wonder if the perspectives that I have today wouldn't be as bright or as focused on back when I was worried about all these things, when my time was scattered because I was coaching, Pop Warner football, and I'm trying to start my own business. And I don't know what the average age of Congress is, but you look a lot younger than most of them.
I think the average senator's in their 60s. And actually, I think that's part of the problem. Yeah. That's why we released a reform agenda that's calling for term limits, that's calling for...
hold on, what's that? You're wanting term limits?
Term limits, yeah. I think three terms in Congress is enough. 18 years
for senators.
For a senator, 3 terms in the Senate. Yeah, 18 years. It'd be 9 terms in the House, but 18 years is a long time. And we need fresh blood. We need fresh ideas. Yeah. That same reform agenda is calling for elimination of things like insider trading, participation in prediction markets. This idea that your goal in going to Congress to represent the people of this state shouldn't be to make yourself wealthy or to stay there for 50 years. Yeah. Go and do your service, come back, right? That's the premise of this country, right? We have a citizen government. Yeah. And but your point about it's not the best timing, to run for the U.S. Senate when you got 2 kids in high school and 1 in middle school. And that's honestly hard. That's the hardest part about this. Yeah. And because you feel like, God, am I failing as a dad? Am I failing as a husband? Yeah. And the answer is I'm not. I'm honest here. I'm not as good of a dad and a husband as I wish I could be right now. Yeah. But my wife and I joined them. My wife's a 5th-generation Montanan, and her family, came here a long time ago. We care deeply about this state, and we look at our kids and we look at the future that they're facing. Yeah. And we kind of looked at ourselves and we said, look, we're blessed enough to have grandkids, and I hope they're here in Montana with us. And I don't want them to ask that question. Hey, Grandma and Grandpa, back when you saw all these things happening? Did you do anything about it? Or what? How could you stand aside? And so we gotta, at some point you gotta stand up. And look, I've kind of been a guy my whole life. I've stayed in line, right? I told people, man, being the son of public school teachers, right? And your parents are teaching in that same school district, in that same school. Like, you get in trouble in class, or something happens, right? The night at home, like, your parents already know. And there is no such thing as due process, right? You are guilty and so you stay in line. And I did, right? I stayed in line. I went to West Point. I did all these things, and my wife too, and we were kind of rule followers. But we said, this country is headed toward catastrophe. And it's not one leader or one person, right? And it's not necessarily one election. It's a system that has gotten to a point that our founders foresaw that is ripping itself apart. And we have to try to do something. Our kids deserve better. Frankly, my friends who gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country, who are in the ground, they deserve better than what's happening in this country. And so we jumped into this thing. It's hard, but our hope is that, I'm missing things at home, and it's hard. My wife, I'm deeply, deeply grateful. She's been incredible, not just as a partner in this journey, but she's a single mom, trying to hold all these things together. But countries and families and individuals have made incredible sacrifices for this country over the last 250 years, and so we're trying to do our part.
Yeah, well, that's admirable. I'll be honest with you. When I heard your candidacy got announced, so my wife has known. This dark little secret I've always had is someday, somewhere, someone's going to come out of the woodwork and run as an independent. Because
somebody's going to be crazy enough to challenge a two-party system.
I got thrown out of the Republican Party here in the Gallatin Valley because I spent too much time talking about fiscal responsibility, evidently, and public lands and access. And they just told me, you know what, we don't need you here anymore. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I grew up, went to college, the whole Reagan Revolution and everything, and I was, kind of that conservative guy. And then when you kind of get the cold water thrown on you, you're like, you know what, this probably isn't the best. For someone who likes to think as independent as I do, and who enjoys I push myself to be uncomfortable mentally and in my own thoughts, because I have written on my whiteboard there, beware the false comforts of ignorance.
Yeah.
And I find most every time I've said something stupid or done something stupid, it was out of ignorance. Probably not malice, just I thought I knew everything. Mm-hmm. That was an awakening where, all right, different way to go through my life here, not thinking that one side has all the answers. And the liberation of that, if you want to call it, the more and more I've waited and hoped that we would start having more of an independent opportunity in this country. Mm-hmm. But when you look at just the cost of elections and everything else, it's like, holy smokes. I mean, you have, if I'm reading this correctly, you have former Governor Mark Roscoe, Montana, a Republican, who I got to vote for him. He is my favorite governor. And I don't know if because I voted for him twice, he appointed me to committees, but he appointed me to some committees. And I've always thought of him previously being the Attorney General. And he definitely put the state above his whatever.
Oh, he's a good man. Yeah, he is a true Montana first, country first individual, and that idea of service.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that his party has since, what do they call it? I don't know, sanctioned him, or
they kicked him out.
Kicked him out of the Montana Republican Party.
Here's a guy who was the head of the Republican National Committee.
Yeah.
Here was a guy who chaired George W. Bush's re-election campaign in 2004. And that's kind of one of these things, like, who gets to define what a Republican is or what a Democrat is these days?
Exactly. And
they've muddied the water so much. What are they?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, look, I think I've said to folks, I think I'm a better Republican than most of the Republicans in the U.S. Senate right now, because like I'm a fiscal conservative, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the debt's skyrocketing. I'm for rule of law.
Yeah.
And they're somehow comfortable with pardoning people who attack cops.
Yeah.
I'm for being tough on Russia.
Yeah.
We're kind of licking Putin's boots here,
Yeah.
you know, and all these things that you see, and it's like, wait a minute. I thought, you know, Dwight Eisenhower, Ronald Reagan, like, this is not the Republican Party.
Right. That's not the one I grew up with.
Yeah.
And so many of my friends who are kind of like me, I hear them say, I don't know that I have a party anymore.
Yeah.
And I quite honestly, I think within where their value system is, I don't think they do.
Yeah. Well,
I feel
that's
I
where
don't.
I am. And I'll tell you, I mean, that's kind of equal opportunity criticism here. I mean, look at the National Democratic Party. You know, you got the leader of the National Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, saying, look, he said this publicly, for every blue-collar voter in rural areas that we lose, we'll pick up 2 in the suburbs. So if you're making that trade, right, for working-class folks in rural areas, so we're going to win in the suburbs, where's that leave Montana?
Yeah.
You know, what are they doing to focus on the issues that matter to people in this state? And so, you know, I call it the sensible majority. I think I'm in that sensible majority. You know, I think about like a football field. I think most Montanans live somewhere between, call it the 25-yard lines. Yeah. You know, maybe I'm at the 45 on the right, you're in the 45 at the left, or 40, vice versa.
Right.
But our national politics is driven by people at the 1. Yeah. And I think we need people to give voice to that sensible majority. And this isn't all just like kumbaya, bring everybody together. Right. This is like, well, yeah, that's part of it, right? Yeah. We need elected leaders who are willing to work with either party when it makes sense for Montana, when it makes sense for this country, but also leaders who are willing to stand up to either party and say, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're not going to put a Chilean copper mine in the headwaters of the Boundary Waters Wilderness Area in Minnesota. Right? And we know that there are plenty of U.S. senators who voted for that, knowing that it was the wrong thing.
Right.
But blind allegiance to party forces your hand.
Right.
You know, I was in a manufacturing business for a while. We sold in the locomotive business at GE, and you learn about quality and quality control. And one of the adages of anytime you're trying to improve a manufacturing process, you have to recognize that a bad system will defeat good people every time.
Yeah.
And right now we have a bad system that demands blind allegiance and is disserving the people of this state and the people of this country.
Yeah, the blind allegiance thing is what's really striking to me, and I think this last primary cycle, and maybe I'm out searching for what I want to see or want to hear, but I look at Congressman Massey from Kentucky, and I don't know that much about him, quite honestly, other than I looked at what he ran on, and it looked like what his party had as their platform in 2024.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now, because he's not stood in line, you're out of here.
Yeah. And let's be clear, he's a very conservative guy.
Yeah.
He stood in line on probably 95% of the issues.
Yeah.
The one he didn't, he said, you know what? We need to release the Epstein files.
Right.
We need to hold accountable sexual predators.
Yeah.
And for that sin,
he's out.
He's out.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I don't care what side you're on.
Agreed.
That's just like, so if ever we need more proof about party over country is the tone of the day back there, I don't know what more evidence we need. And as someone who goes back there more than I would care to, I'd prefer to stay in Montana all the time. It's just, I used to be able to go back there, and it didn't matter what side of the aisle someone was on or what staff they were on, what committee. A lot of the best information comes from some of the staffers who work on the committees. And it's just like, I'll call you later, Randy. They're not going to call me on and email me on their email of their, whatever position they have. And it's just like, really, we're at the point where we can't even have constituents interacting with our government without those people in government concerned. And I don't even want to go down the path of where my conspiracy theories take me when that starts happening.
Yeah. Well, and it
When
makes you wonder who are they afraid of and who do they work for?
Yeah, that's
because
exactly it.
because they should be working for you, right? And that's what I've told folks. I launched this in March, and I said this is an 8-month job interview. Talking to Montanans, I said because I'm going. That's the thing about me, right? Is it's completely clear who I work for.
Yeah.
There's not a party boss that I answer to. There is not an insider donor class. I am talking to Montanans. I want to work for Montanans.
Yeah.
And that's and so when people come to my office, I'm not worried about sending you an email that my overlords might read.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
you're my boss.
Yeah.
And so that example right there, who are they afraid of looking at that?
Yeah.
That's the thing that should worry all of us, because this is a government of the people, by the people,
Right.
for the people.
Yeah.
Not for the special interests, not for the party bosses that want to maintain control.
Right.
That's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
And so, when we look back at the Declaration of Independence, you got to remember that was a declaration not just of independence, that was a declaration of war against the largest empire on the world. In the world.
With the Navy, everybody was afraid of. With
Exactly. And you think about just because it was about control. They didn't have representation. And I'd argue we don't have representation right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm running against a system, and it's a big, powerful system with a lot of money behind it.
Right.
But don't ever underestimate the power of Montanans to declare their independence, to throw off a system that's not working for us anymore.
Well, how do you respond then? Because here's where I want to take this, if you're good with this. I want to hear your case of, one, how an independent might be valid among 3 candidates. And then, when elected, how does an independent become effective within that confine back there of D.C. in the Senate? And then we'll get into the issues that this audience is built around, is public lands, conservation, hunting, fishing, stuff like that. But I think people, and we're not going to get into all the other issues, right?
Yeah.
So anyone watching right now, if you think we're here to talk about immigration and abortion and taxes and everything, there's plenty of other platforms for that. We're going to talk.
And look, come to the event. I'm happy. I take questions all the time. When I do events, I'll say, look, I'll stay around and I'll answer questions as long as people want, and that's because that's what you deserve. So I'm happy to talk about all those issues.
Yeah. So I kind of want to pivot to that. When you look at how much money is being spent to try maintain control of the U.S. Senate or take control of the Senate, your 2 opponents have checkbooks that seem unlimited.
Yeah. Well, and the Supreme Court, unfortunately, this week just helped grow those limits and allow really unlimited money coming from the parties to individual candidates.
So if I wanted to make an individual donation to your or any of your opponents' campaigns, I'm capped at what, $3,500?
$3,500, yes.
But if I'm a billionaire or a trillionaire,
right,
and I want to go and write a $1 billion check to a PAC, a darker money group.
Absolutely, yeah.
They can then filter it in any way, shape, or form on behalf of you or the 2 opponents you have. Just when you think about that.
Oh, yeah.
That is, it's like, how in the hell did we get to this point where most Montanans can't afford a $3,500 donation anyhow?
Oh, yeah. But, it's terrible. You got to ask people for that.
That's the cap.
Right.
But an out-of-state person, and I look at a lot of these PACs that are being funded in the primary especially, they are very heavily funded by ideological billionaires from outside of Montana. It's like people, if nothing else, and regardless of where your candidacy ends up, I hope Montanans just want to push back on that and say, you know what, we reject that.
Yeah.
But it brings up the question in this, how do you fund a campaign to compete against all this national money that the DNC and the RNC is really good at raising?
Yeah. Look, it's hard. And we're going out there, we're talking with folks folks want to donate, you can check out our website, www.sethformontana.com. But that aside, and we're going out and talking to individual Montanans. Our campaign has collected donations from more individual Montanans than every other candidate, including all the folks in the primaries combined.
Wow.
Twice as many as from individual Montanans as my Republican opponent, in part because they don't have to. Right? Yeah. He don't have to go around asking individuals because he's got all the big money flowing in. But that's the problem, right? And look, Citizens United. I'm not a legal scholar, but it's a terrible decision for this country. I think you look at spending in elections in this state, it's up 2,700%.
Yeah.
Since 2010. How much and what are we benefiting from that?
Nothing.
Our last Senate race, the Sheehy testers over $300 million.
Yeah.
I don't think either of them wanted that either,
no,
to be clear.
They didn't.
$300+ million.
Yeah.
And you think about that per voter. So I got a family of 5.
Yeah.
You do the math. You could have said, okay, for that amount of money, let me send you a check, $1,000 for each member of your family. I could have gotten a check for $5,000 with a brochure that said, here's the difference between the two candidates, make your choice.
Yeah.
I would have been a lot happier not having my football games on Saturdays and Sundays interrupted with, political ad after political ad. And it's going to happen again this year.
Right.
And it's a major problem. I think the Montana plan is a great approach. I'm proud. Our campaign got endorsed by End Citizens United, which is a nationwide effort to address
Citizens United.
End Citizens United. Yeah. They're addressing not just the problem of Citizens United, but corruption more broadly in politics. Because that money, it's leading to corruption.
Absolutely.
And here's the other thing we face in this country right now. We have 2 parties, but in most of this country, we have one-party rule.
Exactly.
And one-party rule doesn't work in San Francisco, doesn't work in Portland. It's not working in Montana or the mountain or the rural Mountain West, Dakotas. Like, we need competition, because when you don't have competition, you not only get bad governance, you get corruption.
Right.
And that money fuels it. We have 95% of our House districts right now are not competitive in the general election. Right. It's won in the primary. Yep. And the parties have that power. So most of these primaries are closed. And so we are seeing just, outside forces, dictate our politics with money. And look, Montana, it didn't work in Montana in the days of the Copper Kings.
Right.
It shouldn't work in Montana today. And a lot of people say, hey, you're crazy to run as an independent. Well, I think you're crazy to not try this, to not think that we need a different approach. And so we're going out, individuals, trying to get as much support as we can. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of other people in this country that see this problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's and a lot of people who do have resources too, who care about this country first. Maybe they were part of a party before and they're like, wait a minute, folks, this ain't working.
No, and that was a point I was going to bring up. I'm seeing, if you look at all the campaign spending reports and everything else, if there's a bright light to this, we have seen a lot of wealthier people say, you know what, I'm not giving my money to the DNC or the RNC. Yeah. I'm going to give my money to groups that are trying to change this system, trying to overturn the U.S. Supreme Court, Citizens United. So, question becomes then, are people like that able, or are they going to help you, or do you have any control over whether or not they help you? Or?
Look, we're trying to make our case as loudly and as broadly as we possibly can. And anybody who believes that we need a different direction in this country, I welcome their support. Yeah. I think that's I'm not in this realm of telling what groups I'm not telling people what to do with their money. Right. I'm about saying this is what this campaign's focused on. This is why I'm doing this. Please join me. I'm trying to bring on board Republicans, Democrats, independents, libertarians, Green Party members. This is a campaign for all Montanans. And that's why, you see we have the support of, people like former Republican Governor Mark Roscoe, of people like, John Tester, also of the former chair of the Republican Party in Montana, Susan Casey, the former chair of the Democratic Party in Montana, that said, look, we need to get back to serving the majority of Montanans that are not happy with either of these options.
Yeah. And for those thinking about this in Montana, but I always tell the audience, what we discuss here in Montana, I can give a deeper discussion on it because I'm so involved in it, but understand the same things going on in your state.
Yeah.
I don't care what state you live in, this issue is playing out. And when you talk about the extremes this year in our primary, everyone knows if you win the Republican primary in a lot of districts,
Right.
you almost run uncontested.
Right.
Or maybe we got a few areas where if you win the Democratic primary, you're probably going to win.
Right.
So in comes all this out-of-state money. Part of it, and I did a lot of research on this because I did a video piece on it.
Yeah.
We had, I think, 13 or 16 Montana legislators who are Republicans who said, we're here to govern.
Yeah.
We're not here to, quote unquote, have to show them or kick them in the teeth or jab them in the eye. We're here to govern. They all got primaried.
Oh, yeah.
And so I used my platform to take one of them who he and I have argued and debated. I've known him for 20-some years, and he'd probably call me everything but a human being.
Yeah.
But I know he's honest.
Yeah.
And a huge chunk of money from a very wealthy person in Pennsylvania was funding a PAC that was going after him and trying to support his opponent, who was even, his opponent was way right.
Right.
And fortunately, he won. But it's your point of this is a symptom of a broken system.
Right.
When a Pennsylvania billionaire can influence the politics
Right.
and the votes and the outcomes in rural Montana,
Right.
we have to ask ourselves, is this really the system we wanted?
Yeah, these outside groups spent how many? I mean, some estimates up to like maybe $9 million on Republican legislative primaries to oust moderate Republicans who actually worked with the governor.
Right.
A Republican governor to move forward our agenda. I mean, this is how crazy it is, right? These were legislators actually partnered with Gianforte in many cases, Governor Gianforte and his agenda, and yet the party says, Right. And their platform actually says, if you even think to collaborate with a Democrat, you're no longer able to call yourself a Republican.
Right.
What are we doing? We're party loyalty, and it's about control.
Yeah, it is.
Because that out-of-state money wants to say, look, we don't want people necessarily who are going to compromise. We want people who are going to have control, who we can control. And then you saw, look, in the race that I'm in, the Republican in this race, the Republican primary, the incumbent senator that I was running against, he withdrew 3 minutes before the filing deadline.
Yeah.
You know, everyone assumed, he made every indication that he was running up until the last minute. 3 minutes before 5 p.m. on the last day to file, he withdraws from the race. And he tipped off, his wannabe anointed successor who got in at that same time so that there effectively wasn't a primary. And so the question is, well, okay, who chose him?
Yeah.
Because the voters didn't. Who was in that room?
Yeah.
What were the questions they asked? What were the purity tests that he had to pass? And who's he working for?
Yeah.
Because he's not working for the voters.
Right.
And that's the problem. We need the voters to have the control, and our elected officials need to be accountable to the voters, not to a party boss who demands loyalty or some litmus test that you have to pass. We need people who, yes, can bring people together, but also can be truth tellers. Yeah. And it's a sad day in this country when you see somebody, and again, I don't know what percentage things I disagree with or agree with Thomas Massey on, but I agree that he stood up for principle when it comes to the Epstein files, and you see him getting kicked out for that. Right. Bill Cassidy, you see him getting kicked out for, I don't even know what his sin was. I don't know. And you see it, but do you see people getting canceled on the Democratic side too?
Oh, you do.
You get out of line, and that's the fundamental problem that we have to shift. So is it hard to run as an independent? It is. It's uncomfortable to run as an independent. Actually, when you talk, I'm getting flack from both sides. But I think quote actually you shared with me, an old Vietnam pilot that said, you know what, when you're taking flak, that's how you know you're over the high value target. Yeah,
he told me that.
This is important, and it's going to be rough. There's going to be a lot of money that comes at you very personally. But we're just going to keep building a campaign that's talking to Montanans. I'm going to get around every nook and cranny of this state and just have conversations and dialogue. We'll be showing up in every single community, because that's what we need. We need politicians and elected leaders who show up.
Yeah. Well, anyone who doubts the control the party system has, and this is kind of my transition to the next step, is I went through in preparation for this and for some other stuff I've been doing that I'm going to share with my audience about the upcoming election, what a freshman senator who is told to stand in line, but stand in the back of the line. I went and on both sides, I looked at what's the voting record of a freshman senator in their first 2 terms compared to what their party leadership tells them. In the last 4 years, I could not find where a freshman senator voted against the party leadership.
Yeah.
Not one. Maybe it's out there, and I didn't see it. So I said, okay, I'm going to go look at Montana. Right now we have a freshman senator. And, he's only been there a year and a half, so he's probably learning the ropes. Mm-hmm. There's not a person, I think, in Congress more despised than Mike Lee. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Within Congress and in Montana, because Mike Lee is always gumming up the works. You get a good bipartisan bill about forest management or wildland fire management, and Mike Lee has to bury a poison pill in there. He's the guy last summer who tried to use the big, beautiful bill to sell millions of acres of. Well, I went and looked at the voting records of Montana's freshman senator and compared it to Mike Lee. And if someone can show me a difference between those actual floor votes, now I'm not talking like, the small votes, the procedural stuff. Maybe there was a difference and I missed it. But in my theory, Utah already has 2 senators. They don't need 4. Yeah. And so another guy who has a lot of Montanans who are like, that's not my style, is Ted Cruz from Texas. He says, we got 2% public land. In my mind, that's 2% too much. Yeah. I couldn't find any difference in those voting records. But again, maybe I didn't dig deep enough. Maybe I'm wrong. But my point of going through that exercise, and the same applies over on, I looked at some freshman Democratic senators, and it is the same exact thing on that side. Yeah. So if you're voting for the Democrat, are you really voting to give Chuck Schumer another vote? Yeah. Because when I look at what just happened in New York in the primary elections, that does not reflect Montana values.
No. And
if you vote on the Republican side, are you just giving Mitch McConnell or Ted Cruz or Mike Lee an extra vote?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, you are these days. And there's so much pressure. In fact, as I was thinking about this, it became public. I quit my job, and you get a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure to say, look, you just have to run as part of a party. This idea you can.
Oh, really? Pressure to run as a party?
Oh, as part of a party, really? Because people call you and say, oh, you got to run. And you got people who are saying, oh, I really want you to run, but you have to run as part of a party, and you have to do this. I said, I don't want to go to the U.S. Senate and work for Chuck Schumer. Yeah. I don't want to go there and work for Mike Lee either. Yeah. I don't work for Montana. Yeah. And I think that is the challenge. And again, I go back to a bad system will defeat a good person every time. So if we want to see a different direction for this country, if we want to get past politics as usual, we have to stop electing politicians as usual. Right? We have to do something different. So you're spot on. It's exactly why I'm running as an independent. Yeah.
So that's part of what appeals to your candidacy, Dr. Eisenhower's candidacy. I wish he was in I wish we had an independent in the House district I'm going to get to vote for, because maybe one of my friends, Jim Posowitz, who was one of my conservation mentors. Yeah. He said, Randy, beware of an old man in a hurry. And he was referring to himself. And I think, well, I'm 61 now. Maybe I'm that old man in a hurry. But I just, you have my ear. Let's put it that way. I'll listen to what everyone else has to say, but I've done that for many, many years now. And what I got was a Mike Lee surrogate in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
What I got was a Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi surrogate in some instances. And I'm
Right.
I'm ready to move forward.
Well, you
So-
need to know who we're working for.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So with that, then, I look at all these notes I have here, Seth. I'm sorry, I'm skipping around, but I want to go to. We'll wrap up a lot with all the issues any of the issues you want to talk about that you think this audience would be interested in, but the argument is, well, you're going to go to D.C. if you win, and you're going to be. Who are you going to caucus with? How are you going to get committee assignments? You're just going to be one person now out of 100. You're not going to be on this team of 48 or 52 or whatever. You're not going to have any sway. You're not going to get anything done.
Yeah.
What's the answer to that?
Well, look, we and I've said I'm not going to D.C. to put on a jersey, right? Most politicians you put on a blue jersey with a D on it or a red one with an R, and that's the team you fight for.
Yeah.
That's no benefit to Montana, right? As you said, we don't need Montana senator just go and be a surrogate for Chuck Schumer or a surrogate for Mike Lee or Ted Cruz. That's not what we need. And I'll tell you, in a very evenly divided Senate, one vote makes a huge difference, right? We talked earlier about the green lighting a copper mine in the headwaters of the Boundary Waters Wilderness Area. That one vote, would have stopped that.
Yeah.
And you think about all the issues in the U.S. Senate. Both sides need that vote, right? So how do you negotiate for committee assignments? Leverage. Yeah. and you have leverage in a very evenly divided Senate. I think the other thing I would tell you, the thing that I learned about humans is we're social animals. And it's hard to stand alone, right? But I've said I'm willing to go and sit at the lunch table alone in the in the Senate dining room. I don't need to have lunch with either of these folks. But I tell you, I don't think I'm going to be at that table alone.
Yeah.
I've talked to U.S. senators from both parties actually.
Yeah.
They're miserable. They don't like the system either.
Right.
But it's hard to go and stand alone. And I think that as an independent, I think I'll be able to get a couple people to join me. And if you get, some moderate Republicans or moderate Dems to say, you know what, maybe I don't leave my caucus,
right,
but I form an independent voting bloc.
Right.
You get 3, 4, 5 U.S. senators that form a guess what small group controls the agenda of the U.S. Senate. That small group. And that's not to sound arrogant, but that's to say we can move this country forward. Because this idea that, boy, one person can't make a difference, or 3 or 4 or 5. Well, in the U.S. Senate, you got a few people. It's not only about leverage; it's about providing the courage for some other people to step out of line and tackle things that make sense. Right? Protect public lands, like even issues like comprehensive immigration reform. We're not going to talk about immigration.
Right.
Both parties know that we need comprehensive immigration reform. Both parties know we need secure borders. We need to enforce our immigration laws. But we have to provide clear pathways to citizenship and workforce opportunities. But it's stuck in the two-party dysfunction. An independent and a small group of independents can move things forward. We've seen it, things like the Gang of Eight, and we've seen this in the past, but not on a sustained level.
Right.
So I think an independent can actually not only get assignments, can move things forward in a positive way for Montana and for this country.
Yeah. No, those of us who study leverage, negotiations, leadership, that's pretty apparent.
Yeah.
But the other sides, the two sides that fear you or fear your candidacy are like, oh, that's going to make it even more complicated.
Yeah.
Especially in a Senate where a lot of the votes require 60. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize this, that in the Senate, there's a 60 vote rule for a lot of things. Now, if it's budgetary and otherwise, it's a simple 51. And if it's a tie, the vice president casts the deciding vote. So when they're trying to get to 60 votes, even more leverage because now they already had to bring in somebody or a handful from the other side.
Right. Right.
And now, in my mind of thinking, someone who really understands leverage and negotiations could really play an important role in the U.S. Senate as another one of those, hey, what's best for my people, my country, my citizens of my state? And they don't want to have a place where it has to be moderated.
Yeah.
And as much as one side's in the minority right now, they're licking their chops that someday they could be in the majority and they could behave the same way the majority of today is behaving.
Right.
Because when they had it, they behaved the same way.
Oh, totally. And look, you think, I'm too much of an optimist, but I still do think that there are a lot of people in Congress, a lot of people in the Senate who want to move the country forward. They're trapped in a bad system.
I absolutely
and I think there are good
that.
people there who get stuck in a bad system.
Yep.
And I think an independent or a small group of independents can help move things forward. Because look, I don't care, if both sides want to use me as a punching bag, if it can move things forward, if I don't care about credit for things. I was a Green Beret in the Army, and one of the things about Green Berets is, we call ourselves the silent professionals. We're supposed to work by, with, and through other people. I lived in a grass hut for a better part of a year in the southern Philippines, advising a brigade of Filipino Marines fighting an insurgency in that part of the world.
Yeah.
And my job, I was a probably 30-ish-year-old captain advising a 50-plus-year-old Filipino colonel.
Wow.
And I remember one day we're planning for a big operation. One of these groups we know had massed in a certain area, and we were planning a pretty big operation. And sitting there with the colonel, and we're talking about the tactics, where he's going to put his command post, where we're going to have the various units, where we thought the enemy was, and we were having a debate about where that command post should be. And I kept saying to him, look, Colonel, I think you need to put it here, because when you're running the battalion, you can't be engaged in a direct firefight, because then you're a rifleman.
Yeah.
You're not a colonel, right? We need you to be a colonel. And he didn't really acknowledge it. And kept saying, I made the point like 3 or 4 times, just roundabout, just trying to still make it. But he never kind of said, yes, you're right. 3 hours later, after the planning's all done, the 2-star Filipino general comes in for the briefing on how the operation's going to go. And the colonel's briefing the plan, and he says, and I'm going to put my command post right here because I have to command. I can't be. You said exactly what I said. Did he give me credit? Of course not.
Right.
But it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
We got the mission done. And one of my favorite presidents is Harry Truman.
Yeah.
People always think about his quote of "the buck stops here." And I love that quote. But the quote I really admire about Truman more than anything is he said, "It's amazing what we can accomplish if nobody cares who gets the credit."
Yeah.
And I think that's the model of leadership. An independent, small group of them can facilitate compromise, can move things forward. And I think there's that appetite for it in the U.S. Senate, because those folks aren't happy either.
Right.
They don't like this. We can move forward. I'm an optimist.
Yeah. No, I have met with a lot of U.S. senators, and they are so much like the average American. Most of them are good people.
Yeah.
But they are in a system that is eating them up. And you can see the wear and tear on some of them.
Yeah.
It's like, I wish I didn't have to play the game this way.
Because they see the problems.
Right.
And I tell you, and it's, we talk about the revolution, we talk about the Civil War, we talk about World War II, we talk about the courage that Americans have seen before. I would tell you, we're in a tough spot as a country. But I will never quit on this country, and I firmly believe in the promise of this country. And we've seen it before, And I think I've been sharing with some groups. You look to, say October 1957. Think about the challenges this country faced. The big historical event happened in 1957. Sputnik launches.
Yeah.
Soviets beat us into space, and you think about. It's easy for us to forget how important of an event that was, because we know how the story ended.
Yeah.
But in October 1957, Americans across this country were terrified, right? Every amateur radio operator could hear beep, beep, beep. That satellite passing over the U.S. 4 different times in the span of a day. You imagine what Americans are thinking. Wow, how did the Soviets beat us?
Right.
We can hear it. What can it hear of us? Is there a weapon on that? How are we behind? How are we going to catch up? And you think, okay, what did our elected leaders do at that time? that the Democrats say, yes, this is our issue. This is how we're going to take back the presidency in 1960. And this is, once we have that, then we'll fix everything. Once we get control, then we'll start fixing things. Yeah. Did the Republicans say, all right, finally, we can say the Democrats are the pinko, commies. This is going to allow us to have sustained power. This is the issue that we can beat our opponents over the head with. Yeah. Did we turn the guns inward? No. That satellite launched October 1957, less than a year later. Dwight Eisenhower, Republican president, good West Point grad, by the way, signed into law a bill called the National Defense Education Act, passed by a democratically controlled Congress. Yeah. Our leaders came together and they said, look, we're going to invest in STEM education. We're going to invest in research. We're going to invest in the trades, too. Right. We're betting on America to win. Yeah. We believe in America's ability to win. And that spirit, that act, the other infrastructure investments they made, that act of betting on America to outcompete and win, that allowed us not just to win the space race, but to prevail in the Cold War. And it set the stage for 75 years of technological and economic dominance of this country. And we need leaders now who are betting on America to win and are bringing us together, turning the guns outward rather than inward, because we can still win. We still are the greatest country on this planet, but we have to start acting like it.
Yeah. Wow, that's a pretty compelling pitch there, Seth.
Well, it's a great story. It's just history, and it's no reason we can't be that now.
Right. That's probably I think the disappointing part most Americans feel is we have all the potential in the world to continue our role as the leader in so many things, but our system has been handed off to two groups who put their future over the future and benefit of the country. So, yep. Well, now we're going to get into the fun things.
These are the fun things.
Yeah. These are the things that the audience, sorry to make them have to hang around for all this time before we get your opinions on a lot of this stuff. But I've been to some things where I've just stood in the back and listened to you talk. I'd be interested to maybe, do you have just like your generic statement about public lands and access and conservation for Montanans that maybe gets us into these three other sheets of points I got here?
That's one of the main reasons I'm running. I mean, our public lands are our common ground. Everybody, doesn't matter whether you're a millionaire or making minimum wage, everyone can hunt, fish, and recreate. This is one of the main differences of this country versus Europe. In Europe, you get something like this, you have to be royalty. Right? Yeah. You're the somewhere royalty or some duke or count or something because you're a regular Joe. You don't get this, right? And I'll tell you, it's very important to our way of life. When we talk about the Montana way of life, being able to go out and feel like a wealthy landowner, all of us own that land, and that is not only these efforts to say either to pass off our public lands, transfer federal lands to the state. I mean, that's just a pathway to selling them off. Right. We know that, right? Yeah. That's a ruse. So we need somebody that's not only going to say no, who's going to lead the charge to defend our public lands, make sure they're being maintained, and make sure that our habitats are being cared for. I mean, it's fundamentally important to me.
Yeah. Do you think that our public land management is kind of a reflection of a dysfunctional Congress where every discussion about public land policy management is an either or? It's, at least to me, it seems like it's a binary. You got to have all this and nothing else, or all this and nothing else.
Yeah. Right.
For a long time, we've had some of everything and a lot in the middle.
Right. I think that's why we need people who are willing to work across partisan divides, who are willing to bring about, we talk about multiple use. I'd say collaborative use.
Yeah.
Look, we've got a lot of people who enjoy our public lands for a lot of different uses. Yeah. Maybe I want to hunt. Maybe I want to go watch birds. Maybe I want to ride ATVs or snowmobiles.
Right.
Like this is all of our land, and we can actually come up with collaborative solutions to say, there's certain areas, that maybe we shouldn't be snow because that's a very sensitive migration corridor, right? But other areas, it's fine. And we can get to those solutions. We've seen it. We've seen it in Montana, right? Yeah. The Blackfoot Clearwater Stewardship Act didn't pass, but some of the things we've seen in terms of saying, like, how do we get to, okay, these areas, we want to have access in certain ways in these areas. These areas, they're a little more sensitive, and we can have sensible conversations when we allow for that, when we encourage that. And I think that's what Montanans want. I think that's what Americans want.
Yeah, and that's what we've done. When you look at a national forest plan, they got to do their plan every however many years. Everybody gets to comment. Yeah. And they take all those comments and they got to say, well, we got some for this and some for that. We can't have everything everywhere. So how do we say, okay, this area over here, it's already pretty heavily eroded, so let's just keep the motorized access stuff there. This place over here hasn't had a road, doesn't even have any trails. Right. Let's not change that. And so there's balance for, whatever resource issues, and we have that in the management plans at the forest level, and also the BLM has an equivalent called a RMP, a resource management plan. Where we all give our feedback. Right. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, we have a Congress that has said we will use something called the Congressional Review Act, and that regardless of what they invalidate, whatever BLM plan or Forest Service plan, the concern for me is thousands of Americans commented on these plans. And it was a compromise. And now whoever holds the levers of power.
Right. By one vote. Simple majority.
We're going to invalidate that plan.
Yeah.
I said, how does that enfranchise any American to think my voice matters?
Yeah. That's the problem, right? And then it goes to, we often default then to the legal system.
Right.
And legal system, it's binary. Right?
Yeah.
There's a winner and there's a loser.
Yeah.
And I think we need to make sure that we have the type of collaborative discussion because, you and I might disagree on some things. But we could probably come to a reasonable compromise, right? You get a little,
Hopefully.
I get a little. And I think most Montanans feel that way. Most Americans feel that way where we can all and that's important, actually. So we think about our public lands. It's important that everybody feels like they have a voice and they have a stake.
Yeah.
Because once you feel like, okay, well, you know what, my voice didn't get heard, so I don't care about public lands. Because wait a minute, I'm not really a public landowner if my voice isn't heard.
Right.
So we need to keep, if we want to. I mean, Montana is about 30% of our acreage is public land.
Public land.
It's vitally important. And that's not owned by one group.
No.
Right? One interest group, one type of people, one type of use, right?
Yep.
And if we want to maintain those, we have to make sure that everybody feels like they have a stake and they have a say in how those public lands get accessed and used and how we make sure that we're achieving our conservation and our stewardship objectives, which are really important for future generations.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of times I comment on those plans over the last 30 years and I didn't get what I wanted.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's okay. I felt the process was trying to balance the multiple use concept that these are public lands and they are here to be to the benefit of not just what Randy Newberg wants.
Right. But Randy Newberg had a say.
Right.
That's one of the things that's this idea of concept of shared governance. It's one of the things you think about leading a university, right? Leading a university can be a nightmare. In some ways. I love doing it for 8 years, but you got all these various, stakeholder groups, whether it's faculty or students or staff or alumni or legislators or the regents or the governor and all these various stakeholders, and everybody has a say. And sometimes their interests are diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
But when you can bring people together and they feel like, okay, there was meaningful prior consultation and you had your say, here's where we ended up. but you had a voice. And doesn't always mean that it's always compromised, but when people can feel like their voice was heard, they were able to participate, you get buy-in. And I think that's really important.
So you touched on something there. This is going to be a bit of a diversion from the hunting, fishing, conservation stuff. When I was standing in the back listening to you at one of the events, someone asked you a question. I'll get it wrong, but the reason I remember it is because it surprised me. You being the president of the University of Montana for how many years?
8 years, yeah.
You talked about, and I did not expect this from someone who came from the academic university world. You talked about the importance of investing in other jobs, other careers, other certifications, other trainings. And what you guys did, I think the example you gave was a college at Great Falls or something.
Yeah.
But you talked about how if we want Montanans to be able to stay in Montana, we can't expect them all to have a 4-year college degree.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Of course not.
We need to invest in. You sounded like Mike Rowe when you were saying this. And so the reason I say that is a lot of my audience, that's their profession. That's their career.
Yeah.
And there's often this belief that, everyone needs a 4-year degree.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
And
that
was our mission. I said, look, our job is to create opportunity and a path to the life that they want for every single Montanan. It shouldn't matter where you come from, what you look like, who your parents were, how much money you had. We were a university that said, look, we're not ever going to brag about how many people we turn away.
Yeah.
Right? You look at many higher ed institutions. Oh, we're so great because we only accept 5% of the people who apply. Tell me how refusing or rejecting 95% of the people that want to come, tell me how that makes you high quality, because I don't get it, you know? And so we said we want to create opportunity. And if that's going to be our mission, it can't just be 2-year or 4-year or graduate degrees.
Right.
We have to think about education like this kind of 7-lane highway, where coming out of high school, there's a lot of good jobs that you don't need a degree for, but you probably need some training for.
Right.
Now, we weren't funded to provide that type of training, unfortunately. So I had to go hat in hand to the Montana legislature in 2021. Again, in 2023, we created a program called Accelerate Montana, where we said, all right, I had a couple of people that we carved out and said, your job, go work with employers around this state and develop short-term, 6-week, 12-week training programs in high areas of demand where we can get people into jobs. They come through it, and we did it all around the state. Things like CDL training, commercial driver's license training, things like job site ready, getting people giving them the basics to be safe on a construction site. Short form kind of coding courses and things like that say, look, there's a lot of ways and pathways to a good job. We have to focus on providing that for everybody. And that was a big success. My last year at the university, we had about 11,000 students in credit-bearing programs. We had 10,387 unique learners that went through some sort of lifelong learning course or job skills training course. And that's driving economic growth here. But just as important, it's providing jobs and income, but also meaning for people. We had a guy who went through one of these programs in Great Falls, maybe what you mentioned. And,
that's the story I think you told.
He went through a CDL training program. This guy in his 50s, and he said, you know what, this gave me hope again. Because I didn't think I had anything left to offer the world, right? I don't know what he did beforehand, but was looking for a career change. And that's the thing. People, there's dignity in work.
Yeah.
Right? And people want to work. We just have to make sure that we're providing opportunities and pathways for everybody in the state to find work, and not limiting people to say, oh, you need a 4-year degree. No, you don't. Yeah. But we got to provide those training mechanisms. And frankly, we need the government to fund those types of things.
Right. Yeah, so I know that's outside the scope, but when you said that, because it was one of the things in my other cryptic notes I was taking as I was in the back listening.
But it's important for these things, because why do we love living in Montana for all the the outdoor activities? Well, we do have to earn money, right? It's not, we do have to think about job creation in this state. Good mid-wage, high-wage jobs in this state because we see, property prices are soaring. We got a lot of people moving in, and I'm not saying people shouldn't come to Montana, but we have to provide, we have to support job creators.
Right.
We have to support a strong workforce.
Yep.
We have to provide an economy that allows us to live in this state and enjoy the Montana way of life.
Yeah. The reason it's kind of funny to me to hear all this is, as a CPA, you get to see everybody's financial statement.
That's interesting because sometimes I wondered, how do people do it?
Yeah. Well, if you took my top 20 CPA clients in terms of net worth or what their annual income was, probably half of those were really, really smart people who went through the trades.
Absolutely.
And became owners of construction businesses or plumbing or contracting or HVAC or
right.
Very,
very important.
And they're probably laughing all the way to the bank at some, you hear some of these people with, so many degrees it takes a half hour for them to rattle off all their titles. And here they are.
Right.
And those are opportunities in Montana that, one, they're absolutely necessary.
100%.
And I'm more worried about, is that plumber coming to fix my toilet than the extension on my tax return.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's I think a lot of this country's focused too much on one pathway and not talked enough or funded enough the training that we need for the many things, trades and otherwise.
Yeah. So anyhow, when you said that, it took me off path here. But the one thing that right now, and I'm just reflecting on two administrations, Biden and Trump, I got a lot of heat because there were times I'd comment or do content around the Biden administration. Everything had to be alternative energy at the expense of a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, you know what, we can have oil and gas, and we can have this, and we can have solar, and we can have wind, and we can have nuclear. It was, sorry, folks, we're going this way. Along comes the other side. Now with the Trump administration, it's, no, we're going this way. Even if we got to buy out some of these other projects to the tune of billions of dollars to shut down wind and whatever.
Oh, yeah.
You look at a war in Iraq right now, and if ever there's an example of why we need a portfolio of energy sources, we need oil and gas. We need, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on
No,
this?
absolutely. I'm a true all of the above energy guy, right? I actually worked at GE for 7 years. GE's equipment provides a third of the world's power. Everything from gas to nuclear to wind to all, and the idea that we can move off fossil fuels immediately, it's not realistic. No. Right? We need baseload power, right? And so, but we've let ideology creep too far into decisions that should be based on science and common sense. And the same thing, then you see this whiplash of, wait a minute, all of a sudden somehow windmills are woke. I don't know when windmills became woke or why they became woke, but you think about this, that the idea that we're just going to throw away all the investment in renewable energy sources is crazy at a time when people are already struggling to pay their utility bills. Yeah. At a time when, you're right, global uncertainty. I mean, look at China. China has almost half, I think, depending on the calculations, it's 40 to 50% of their electrical generation capacity is renewable energy. Yeah. And you know what? When the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down,
China's like,
they're impacted. Yeah, but much less. So this is a national security imperative. And why would we not want to get as much energy as we can from renewable sources that aren't dependent upon a petro state?
Right. That's my theory. And on this podcast, I've had Theodore Roosevelt IV, who his adult life after getting out of the Navy SEALs was that he was an advisor to investors about energy. Yeah. And he's explained to me how he's like, China's going to win the energy war. He's like, their investment in renewables, their investment in small scale nuclear,
Right.
they're going to be as energy independent as anybody, and
Right.
they're so far ahead of us. And I'm like, great.
Right.
So we're going to end up in all these conflicts over in the fossil fuel world,
Right.
or we're going to make it, or we're going to keep our dependency there so that we need to turn our public landscapes into industrial areas just to satisfy our fossil fuel needs.
Right.
Whereas, I don't know. Again,
No, I agree. And
maybe
I mean,
I'm
it's
out to
maybe
lunch.
it's a political, football, but what people are, and I understand the fears of nuclear, but small scale, kind of modular nuclear reactors. I mean, these are things we need to look at, right? I mean, I make a joke. I said, look, I was an Army guy. If those dumb Navy guys can run, small scale nuclear on their ships without incident for the last, love my Navy brothers and sisters, but no, I give them a little grief. But it's exactly right. We need to look at all these sources and say, all right, how do we meet our growing energy demands while maintaining our landscape, while caring for wildlife, while making sure, but also thinking about, again, back to national security. Right? We talked about food security, energy security. You can't produce the food you need. You can't produce the energy you need. You're dependent on other people.
Yeah.
That is a liability. That's a security risk.
Yeah.
And I think we need leaders to say, let's come together, folks, because this is not about ideology. This is about this country. This is about our security. This is about the health of our environment. Yes.
Right.
But we gotta be much more aggressive in building out a full scope portfolio of energy in this country.
Well, and the reason that comes into play here is if you look at the map of what the Biden administration approved as not permitted but consideration for solar. I'm looking at that. I'm like, there's a lot of really valuable wintering range and migration corridors, and it didn't stay in place long enough to us to see were there going to be permits issued in those areas, but they were within the boundary.
Yeah.
So when I criticize that, one side's like, "Oh, I can't blow it. Are you just a fossil fuel nut?"
Right.
It's like, no, back to my point. I want it all. I want it. I want the whole spectrum. And now I look at the Trump administration. I can't remember, Unleash Energy or whatever their title is. A lot of the permits that are being fast-tracked are going to have a huge consequence on wildlife.
Yeah.
Things that we love. And if you talk to a lot of people in the energy industry, they're just like, they're not that excited about some of these, but they got a few players in their industry that will go and bid on those leases and are asking for this, but they understand in the bigger picture, this is going to be a black eye for us someday.
Yeah.
And so my point in that is bringing up that if our public lands are going to be such a provider of resources, how do we use the technology and what we know to get the ideologies out of the way so we do what's best for, as Roosevelt would say, those Americans still in the womb of time.
Yeah.
We can have energy, or we've proven we can, and take care of things for the next generation. And the next generation, is that?
Absolutely. Well, you start by electing independents who don't answer to party interests, who answer not just to voters, but are thinking about that next generation and thinking about, like, these are one-way doors.
Yeah.
Some of these things, right? You rip up elk habitat. This is not something that you can fix overnight. And you see these things like an I-47, right? Let's name an interstate after a president and go rip a 4-lane highway through the Madison Valley. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
We're just gonna. I mean,
oh my gosh.
And that's just one example, right? That we all see, because we laugh and we think, oh my gosh, like, who in the world thinks this is a good idea? But it's out there.
Yeah.
And some of these other smaller leases that are maybe getting less attention, but we know there's a few things you do. It's hard to undo them, and it takes generations, if ever, to recover from these things. Yeah. And so, but the thing is, there is a way, right? There is
that's it.
There is absolutely a way to say we can build out our energy production. We can do that,
right?
And it doesn't have to be the expense. Same when we're talking about multiple use, right? You can say, hey, there's already roads through here. But we don't need to repeal the roadless rule. I mean, let's be really clear. That is a false.
That's a virtue
false
signal.
dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we have to rebuild the roadless rule so we can do forest management. No, you don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. And we need people that are willing to call BS on these types of things and stand up and say, you don't have to be. You can still be pro-business, pro-energy development, and pro-conservation.
Right.
Those things are not mutually exclusive.
No, that's kind of the interesting part. We went through this period in our country, kind of started in the late 1900s or 1800s with the Boone and Crockett Club demanding a lot of this stuff, and then because of a terrible thing, McKinley getting assassinated, along his vice president happens to be Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
They'd stuffed him in the vice presidency to try to get rid of him because he is too much of a pain in everybody's butt in the Republican Party.
Right.
They're like, let's make him vice president. That's like the path to nowhere.
Right. Yeah.
Well, he ended up
to a pretty big impact. And then he tried to create his own party run, right?
Exactly.
So the troublemakers are sometimes the ones who have the biggest impact.
Right. So
I'm not comparing myself, to be very clear. I'm not comparing myself to Teddy Roosevelt. I would never do that. But sometimes you need to make a little trouble to create the type of change you need.
And so we've shown over the course of generations and generations that one of the things that makes America great is we can have everything. Can't have everything everywhere.
Yep.
But we can have enough of everything in enough places that we all have something and we all benefit from it. And the next generation and the next generation is not whose inheritance we're spending in terms of our resources. We've proven that.
Right.
But maybe I'm too far out to lunch when it comes to
No, you're
to
not.
this.
And look, this is why I care about these issues so much, because this is fundamental to who we are. This is where, I mean, I was reflecting coming in here on, it's because I look at this and I'm like, God dang, I don't have anything like, I want to get one of these guys, right? I'm not Randy Newberg, but like hunting and fishing, like these are important things that matter to our lives as humans, right? Some of the best moments are those. And even when they're not good moments, right? Necessarily the moments when you fail, right? I was reflecting on somebody was talking the other day. So what was the first year you went hunting? I was looking back on it. I think I was 12 years old. With my dad, and I grew up in small town, rural Western Pennsylvania. We went out on state game lands, and opening day of deer season in Pennsylvania is always the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So late November, sometimes early December. It's cold.
Yeah.
Cold, sometimes wet, snowy. And I remember that first time I went hunting, 12 years old, got hunter safety. I had my thing. My dad was, smart as a parent, right? That you got to have that enticement of keeping a kid, awake and energized. So candy, big old thermos of hot chocolate, right? So we get out there, we traipse through, get to our spot in the dark, and we sit down. We were up on just some deadfall. We just went out and had a good seat. We'd scouted out, had a nice overlook in this little valley. Pretty steep though, but some good shot angles. And it's waiting for it to get light, waiting for first light. So I'm drinking my hot chocolate to stay warm. About 9 o'clock, nature calls. Yeah. And like, oh boy, Dad, I gotta pee. And so, all right, go back about 75 yards because the smell. We just got to make sure. So I do it. I traipse around in my little like that Ralphie and Christmas Story.
Yeah, his little
suit.
brother Randy.
Exactly.
Randy, I can't put my arms down.
And so I get back there and taking care of my business, and just as I'm about finished peeing, I hear bang. Think, oh man! So quickly, and I kind of waddle back over there, and my dad's sitting there, and he has a look of, at the same time, joy and sadness. Yeah. Because just as I had walked by, biggest buck he's ever gotten, walks by at 100 feet, and he said, "It was so hard." He said, "I waited. I didn't want to shoot it, but because I felt so bad, buddy." And so my first time hunting, like the 10-minute break is when literally a trophy buck that actually was in our basement for the rest of my childhood. Really? I had to look at that thing and think about the hot chocolate. But I did get the experience of, field dressing and dragging that damn thing up the hill back to the car. But I look back on that and I think, it's a great time with my dad. And I look literally 30 years later. taking my 12-year-old son
Yeah.
out on some state-owned land here in Montana, and my dad was in town visiting, and getting his first deer in the hunt that we had, and he was successful. He got it. I didn't bring a gun with me.
You didn't fill him full of hot chocolate.
No, I didn't. I did, but I made sure. Like I said, all right, I'm his AG. I helped set up as we'd say in the Army, the assistant gunner. Right, I haven't helped him get set up, but we had a great hunt. We actually flanked some deer using some terrain features, some good old Army tactics, and got up. He got his first deer, and my dad got to see it from a distance. And I think about that, and I think generations of Americans made sure that we had this opportunity, because you can't buy that memory, you can't buy that experience, right? You can buy meat, it's expensive as hell. It's nice to fill the fridge, I get it, but you can't replace that experience. And I think think about that all the time. Of future generations, if we're not careful, we miss those types of experiences.
Yeah. Well, you at the University of Montana, I did not know this was happening. I got my email from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and it said they had entered into a partnership with the University of Montana to establish a hunting and conservation.
Yeah, Center for Hunting and Conservation. Absolutely.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Center for Hunting and Conservation. Huh.
Yeah. And
how did that come about?
Well, it's great partnership, actually. And Kyle Weaver, the head of the RMEF. Kyle's a good friend. A lot of respect for Kyle. When Kyle came to take over the RMEF, we had a good meeting in town, and they're a national organization, but #1 wildlife biology program in the country at the University of Montana. We met up, had a cup of coffee, first time we met, and it's funny because I think Kyle had some preconceptions of what's the university president think, what's the university doing. Kyle sat down for a cup of coffee. He spent probably the first 20 to 30 minutes talking about the importance of hunting and why it was okay, and I kind of let him go, and finally I was like, Kyle, let me stop you for a second, because I'm a hunter. We teach courses on hunting at the University of Montana, right? Because I think the assumption is, most universities are anti-hunting.
Right, that's why I bring that up.
And over time, as we built this relationship, we actually built out this course we teach on hunting. It's called Hunting for Sustainability. Okay. And the idea, because when you think about it, right, and RMEF, which I appreciate, you were on leadership there, they coined the phrase hunting is conservation. Yeah. Because and we had the College of Forestry and Conservation at the university, again, wildlife biology, but forestry, resource management. So we're creating the resource managers of tomorrow. Yeah. And when you think about important voices in the conservation movement, hunters have to play a key role. But if you didn't grow up hunting, if your parents didn't, your mom, your dad, it's hard to break into it. So we created a course, and you're taking young university students, maybe who've never shot a firearm, teaching them, how to sight in a rifle, safe firearm procedures, how to hunt in an ethical way, right? Fair chase, and then how to prepare that game. And you're building more generations of hunters, which we need. We need more family lines who have hunting as a key piece of that. And that build a relationship that over time, you also come to realize it's not just creating more hunters. You need the science. Yeah. You need people who are actually focused on the resource, because a lot of our research, and a lot of our decisions, I should say, have politics injected into them, ideology injected into them, and you need to follow the science. We need who's speaking for the resource, right? Yeah. And it's science. So over time we said, all right, let's create a partnership where we're not just working to build that next generation hunter. We're working to facilitate the research studies that understand, what's happening to elk habitat. How are we understanding, what mule deer populations are doing? How are we looking at fish populations? Right. And that's a partnership that I'm really proud of. First of its kind in the country. Deeply grateful to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and their focus on following the science and having that inform our decisions about conservation and wildlife.
Yeah. Well, when I read that, I think I read about that in January or something. I can't remember, but I'm like, I'm usually in the loop on what's going on, but I was out to lunch on that one. But so then we get into, for me, and this is because so much of our public land has amazing forestry resources, and I come from a logging family. My brother's
Yeah.
still a logger. I worked in a sawmill as my college job. Uh, so when you come from that background, my stepdad was a forester. I have a huge amount of interest in how productive lands can benefit wildlife and benefit people.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of examples of how that can be. I look at a lot of in Montana, we've got some really good people right here in Bozeman, south of town.
Mm-hmm.
We just completed a forest treatment project there that got litigated for 5 years before and credit to the Forest Service for not giving up, because most people would have given up after multiple lawsuits over 5 years. But I go there now, and it's one of my hiking spots. And it's an example of how public lands can be managed for the benefit of people, for water quality, and for wildlife. Because the elk that were there, as quick as the first gunshot came, they're like, you know what, there's a little bit of food here, but it's not worth hanging around. There's a lot of really good food down here on this private ranch.
Yep.
And that's where all the elk went to.
Right.
Well, now, I just stepped there the other day on my hike. The quality of forage there is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I look at that as just one of so many examples that we could have in a place like Montana where forest management.
Yeah.
A lot of people will want to grab an image or a picture of a 1970s clear cut, which isn't good for wildlife. It's not long-term sustainable.
Right.
The timber industry is like, yeah, I don't know what we were thinking back then.
Yeah.
The timber industry now, for the most part, is, yeah, we got to make a profit, but how do we do this in a sustainable way?
Right.
You see a path where our forests can be actively managed and,
Absolutely.
and to the benefit of keeping wildlife there, letting people be there, providing some timber and some jobs, even though over the last however many years, Montana's infrastructure for mills and
Right.
timber is pretty sparse now. So
Right.
uh,
No, absolutely.
you
I
have
mean,
an
I think-
idea or a
yeah.
path, because you guys had the forestry school at the
and
U of
I've
M.
learned a ton. You know, that's why I talk about our College of Forestry, our School of Forestry. These are resource managers, right? Forests are resources that need to be managed, right?
Right.
Indigenous people in this in this part of the world, they manage through fire over time, right? They managed, and we can take activity, because fire is a natural part of the landscape, but catastrophic fire
Right.
is catastrophic for wildlife, right?
Right.
Over a long, so we need to actively manage forests. And you know, this idea of, oh, it's clear cut or it's just untouched, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think it's both for habitat, it's also for jobs. I mean, the fact that you have seen the wood products industry in Montana, the number of sawmills that have closed over the last 3 decades, the number of jobs that have gone away at the same time that our forests have become less healthy.
Right.
Like, that's political failure, folks.
Yeah.
Right. There is a way to say, look, we can do active management of these forests. We have to make it easier for people to do some commercial logging on public lands without the tremendous burdens of regulatory and legal challenges that make it unprofitable. Because not only does that prevent catastrophic fire, it renews habitat for elk. It also creates jobs. And you think about Montana's wood basket. We have a really short growing season. So we're not going to grow, big, single, logs that perform. I mean, we can, but it takes a long time.
Yeah, we're not coastal Oregon, coastal California. We're not southeast Georgia.
Yep. But we have a wood basket that's very good for products like CLT, cross-laminated timber, which is a newer product that, in terms of the way they do this and taking small slices of wood, putting them together, you can build buildings up to 8 stories tall with wood.
Yeah.
You're displacing steel, right? So which a lot of it we import from China. So not only are you preventing, you're investing in domestic production of construction materials, you're creating jobs, and this is environmentally friendly. You're taking CO2 out of the air, and you're preventing just more steel. And so to me, this is a win, right?
Yeah.
It's a win for the health of our forest. It's a win for habitat. It's a win for job. It's a win for the environment. And so, but we need actually people to be focused on these types of solutions because they're right there.
Yeah. Well, you'd brought up earlier the roadless rule, and I know a lot of loggers. I know a lot of people in the timber industry, and I polled them. They didn't know I was polling them. I'm like, could you tell me what your top 3 or top 5 issues are for your business?
Yeah.
Not one of them said the roadless rule.
No.
And I use that as an example that regardless of what you feel
Because
about
we can't
it,
even maintain the roads we have, by the way.
yeah.
You know?
And if you go, those who are advocates for it, I say go and look if the roadless rule wasn't here and do an overlay of how much of that same non-roaded terrain is covered by the ESA, Endangered Species Act.
Yep.
A huge portion of it. So it's not like you're punching a road in there with the ESA.
Mm-hmm.
How much of it still has NEPA? Every acre of it still has NEPA.
Mm-hmm.
Every acre of it still has the Clean Water Act. And I'm not saying I want more roads in elk country, but the point of it is we are wasting all of our political energy arguing on something that leaving it in place isn't going to change a lot of this, and removing it isn't going to change a lot of it.
Right.
But it makes for a great virtue signal
Right.
of what side you're on. And in the meantime, the fuels continue to grow on our forests, and we're not managing them.
Right.
And so I'm just curious because a lot of the public land in Montana is Forest Service. I mean, quite a bit's BLM, but a lot of it is Forest Service. And that is timberlands that the old idea that, well, we'll just let it burn like it did in 1910 with the big burn, that's not going to fly today.
No.
There's a lot of people living here. And we, tragically, we just read, 3 wildland firefighters died last week fighting these big fires.
Right.
And we have to figure out a way. We're not going to log our way out of the over accumulation of fuels. We're not going to burn our way out of that. We're going to have to do a whole lot of different things.
Right.
And if we do it right, we could benefit wildlife and keep the wildlife as long as possible, anyhow, on the public land.
Right.
Where me and my audience, we want to have access to where those elk are.
Yeah.
And we have access to that public land. But if the habitat's so poor that they'll go accumulate on private lands,
Yep.
what good is access if the elk say, "No, this is such poor. This management doesn't suit me. I'm out of here."
And it's complex, right? And that's the thing. That's I don't know. Maybe this is why I'm not a good politician. Is there's nuance here, right? And it's easier to talk in sound bites and simple things.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when you start talking about these types of issues, you got to step back. You got to actually roll around in complex a little bit and come out with a solution that actually can serve multiple ends. But it's not a simple soundbite that gets you. Right? Roadless rule. You're right. It's virtue signaling. It's a rallying cry. And people latch onto it. And look, maybe in this media environment, people can't understand complexity. I don't buy it. Right. I think people are smart enough. And I think we need to respect them enough to be able to say, hey, there's some nuance here, folks. There's some complexity here, folks. And let's talk a little bit. Look, you share it with me, right? Because that's the thing for me as a U.S. Senator. There's a lot of issues that I'm not an expert on.
Yeah.
You don't want me to be an expert on. But I gotta listen to folks like you. I gotta listen to groups that are looking at these issues. That's the point, right? My job isn't to know everything.
Yeah.
My job is to work with groups and try to achieve the best for this state, and that's something that gets lost in an area of in a media landscape of sound bites and virtue signaling.
Which is why I love podcasts. We can talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we can jump into these topics. And can you believe we've already been at this at an hour and 47 minutes?
Great conversation.
Oh, Seth, man, you got other things to do. Your staff is going to be banging on the door here. I'll try to get through a couple more of these. In a state like Montana, 2/3 of the state is private property, and 1/3 is public property. We have some amazing private land stewards here in Montana, and I'm always interested in ways that we can help them stay on the land. But as a CPA, who's my primary specialty in the CPA world was trust and estate planning, and you do a lot of business succession planning in that environment of how do you keep this next generation from feeling they got to sell this thing. Right.
Yep.
I've never watched a minute of the show Yellowstone, but everyone tells me that that's been a topic of the billionaire comes and wants to buy them out. And so there's this craziness out there that's anti-conservation easement that I'm trying to figure out. You want to tell our best landowners, the landowners who are still on the ground today and working the land, they probably came here, their families came here 100, 120 years ago. They've made it through 2 world wars. They made it through the Dust Bowl. They made it through the Depression. They made it through the oil crisis of the 70s, the stock market crash of 2008. And we need state legislators and federal officials saying, oh, we need to protect you from yourself because you might exercise your property right and sign a conservation easement.
Right.
These are really smart people who are these working ranchers and farmers right now. But yet we have elected officials who want to say, yeah, but we're not going to let you do certain things with your property rights.
Right. It's crazy. Like, when did individual property rights become something that we're questioning in this country?
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute. Now I need to protect you from yourself.
Yeah. And in the process, you can't exercise your property right the way that you should be able to under our Constitution.
Every farmer and rancher should be able to do with their land what they damn well please.
Yeah.
And that's a decision that they can make with families. Look, conservation easements and making those decisions. That's a tough decision that families, I know there's lots of debates, there's thoughts and how do you do that, but that's the family's decision to make. Yeah. That's that farmer's decision, that rancher's decision. It's not the government's job to say we're going to tell you what you can and can't do with your land. And the fact that people are making that argument, it's baffling to me.
As someone who's really deep into that conservation easement battle going on right now, again, it's funded by dark money from out of state. Mm-hmm. And I struggle with the motivations of why does a group from Texas or Oklahoma or Virginia or Georgia care that a Montana rancher might enter into a permanent conservation easement. Mm-hmm. I don't understand their motivation, why, but I know that I've helped enough of these small businesses and ranchers and farmers try to pass their property on to the next generation, that it isn't the tool that always works, but when it works, it's the best tool.
Yeah.
So why would we take it away from them?
And it keeps that operation going.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing.
That's the cows, not condos.
Yes.
Bumper sticker.
And we talked earlier, farm bankruptcies last year in this country up 46% year over year.
Yeah.
Right. And farmers are struggling, right? You see trade policy ever changing, killing markets. You see input costs soaring.
Yeah.
Why are we making it so hard for family farms to continue?
Right.
And then you want to pile this on. It's crazy to me. And again, remember that we're a net importer of food. If anything, we need to do everything we can to make it easier for small family farms and ranches to continue to thrive, right? Why would we make it harder? And, again, back to the Farm Bill. We talked about the Farm Bill. We've been passed the Farm Bill since 2018. A lot of the Title II of the Farm Bill, the conservation provisions in here, are what provide a lot of the funding for these types of activities that say, okay, you want to keep this piece of ground for conservation and you manage it in a certain way. Those are ways that farmers can make ends meet by having some of their land that they're restoring, that they're making sure that we're maintaining as good habitat, right? So benefits wildlife, keeps those farms afloat, and so in addition to easements, those are other tools that we need to make sure that we're investing in, again, for land conservation, but also the health of our small family farms and ranches.
Yeah. Well, the last one I'm going to throw out there is one I know you're going to get, so I'm going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
Because when you walk into this office, you walk by 3 safes that you saw, you saw against the wall there, of firearms, and another safe of ammo. Mm-hmm. And at home, I have 2 more safes.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of firearms and a lot of ammo, and I will never be a disarmed American.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get people who try to make guns and laws around guns they're a gotcha moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to ask it in a way about, you're trying to gotcha. But I suspect by the time you become a Green Beret and you're, a captain in charge of, your teams, you probably know a few things about firearms.
Few. Yeah.
You understand they're not just this object that will climb out of my safe and go and commit crimes.
Mm-hmm.
You got a 30-second elevator speech
look,
on guns?
to me, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Yeah. And you've got a lot more guns than I have. I'll be very clear. People ask you, well, how many guns do you have? And I say, well, that's none of your business, right? It isn't anybody's business, right? Yeah. But I will say that yes, we need to take steps to address gun violence in this country, but not by trampling on the individual rights of law-abiding gun owners in this country.
And what would that be?
We need to enforce the gun laws we have. Mm-hmm. I think there's some merit to red flag laws and addressing some of the mental health, people in mental health crisis, that we're making sure that we're protecting, themselves too, right? We also have a mental health crisis in this country.
Why
especially in rural America.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why those of us who are, I'm borderline absolutist on the Second Amendment. I'm an absolutist on the U.S. Constitution.
Yeah.
So,
I go back. I swore an oath to support and defend that Constitution. It's really clear.
Yeah, the part I struggle with is why so many of my friends who are adamant about the Second Amendment really feel that there's a stigma or an issue or no reason to fund mental health.
Yeah.
To the level, and let's face it, in this country, mental health is not funded. It is not appreciated of what it is, and that enters into this discussion around gun violence.
Yeah, and the fact that we are not addressing a very real crisis, especially, again, when you get to rural parts of this country. I mean, Montana, our suicide rate is always at the top or near the top in the country. We have many parts of the state where there are no mental health professionals.
Yeah.
And these are investments we need to make. I think it's not just dealing with the downstream impacts of this. We have a culture of isolation and pulling apart. And I think there are steps we need to rebuild and reknit the fabric of our communities. Part of it is investing in rural America too. When I think about the mental health crisis and how hard we're making it, we talk about farmers in the U.S. This is not a fun stat, but farmers in the U.S. are killing themselves at 3.5 times the rate the national average.
Oh.
And that's not something that's fun to talk about. But again, I go back to why are we making it so hard for people? Why aren't we investing in supporting things? Since we can spend $1 billion a day on a senseless war in Iran, why can't we invest in mental health? Why can't we invest to support farmers and ranchers in this country? We're building we're spending millions on a reflecting pool, putting $500 million into a gilded ballroom that nobody wanted. Why can't we put that money, $300 billion to Iran as part of this
settlement?
Yeah. Why are we not investing in supporting, small families and ranches and addressing the mental health crisis in this country? That's what, we talk about these issues, they divide us. Well, wait a minute. Let's talk about all the money. Suddenly, when we want to launch a war, we never ask why we need to where that money's coming from.
Yeah.
But when we talk about mental health, where's the money going to come from? Where'd the money come from for this war that nobody said we needed?
Right.
And I say that as a military veteran who's no dummy, and I'm not naive to the threats in the world. And we're not here to talk about the Iran war, but we could, and we could say there's no one asks where that money's coming from.
Right.
But we need to invest in those and those mental health supports, but also again supporting people who are working really hard to make ends meet.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I took so long. But my
wife
really
enjoyed the conversation.
My wife says it takes me a half hour to say hello. So But
you're pretty. You're not as wordy as I am. So
really?
no,
Oh, man.
no. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I just enjoy your advocacy because these things. It's easy to want to check out, and it's easy to say, you know what, I'm just going to go off and traipse through the hills and chase some elk.
Right.
That's my happy place.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate your bringing issues up for people to be aware of and say, look, this is something we can't take for granted.
Yeah.
Because we've enjoyed this, but conservation doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah. No.
It has to be. You have to have advocates for it. You talk about the Roosevelt family. You talk about the people who really forged a path that gave us what we enjoy today.
Yeah.
And if we're neglectful of that, we will see the Mike Lees and the Ted Cruzes of the world, or the bad policy about solar panels on key habitat. It's like that's very easy for that to slip through the details because it's hard to pay attention to all these things. So I just want to say thank you for your advocacy, for your support, and for your work to bring these issues up on people's radars.
Well, I appreciate that, but I hope if you're in the U.S. Senate that after a year or two of getting my phone calls and emails, you still feel that way, Seth.
Absolutely, I will. Look, hey, I'm not saying we'll always agree, but you'll always have a seat at the table. Then the hunting and conservation community will always have a very important seat at the table if I have the privilege of serving the people of this great state.
Yeah. Well, for me, I just, I think we're at a critical point in this. I feel this. Maybe it's just I'm biased, but I don't think I am. I hear it too much that we're at a critical point where your term that started this was that we need to declare our independence from the parties. And I don't want to discount all the life experiences you bring to this discussion, but I'm at the point where if you were Big Bird or Daffy Duck, I still might vote for you. Just as my declaration of independence from these two parties. And so I think it's great. It's very refreshing to me that this is an election cycle where we have more independent candidates than we ever have. I think that speaks to how frustrated Americans are.
Right.
I think it speaks to what opportunity might exist for those bold souls who are willing to, as you talked about, not necessarily be the best dad or best husband because you're on the road doing this so much and you'd like to maybe be doing something else. But I think it speaks to where we're at. And if we're going to change this thing, it's going to start state by state, election by election.
Right.
And I hope people will give you their time to listen and read and figure out, hey.
Look, guys, like we said at the outset, if you're in that 10% that thinks everything's going great in Congress, well, then I'm probably not your guy. But but if you're in the 90% who don't approve, give us a look. And and I think and I appreciate you're saying that. I hope I can do a better job than Big Bird or Daffy Duck. But and I'd say this too. I hope that this is more for folks, more than just a protest vote.
Right. No,
it is a vote for a new approach, a vote for trying to renew the promise of this country, a vote for the belief and the power of a country that, again, friends of mine gave their lives for, and so many gave their lives for, and I don't take any of that lightly, and I think we have an obligation to those who've gone before us and to those who are going to come after us to be good stewards of this country, to be good stewards of lands, of course, but of this country for future generations, so that they, this American experiment. Yeah, it's 250 years old. Yeah, right. It's our job to keep it going, and that's going to require some substantial change. And it's more than just one person running. Right. We got to build a movement here of folks to say there's a better way.
Well, I also hope that people who maybe are a little bit down in the dumps about it and feel hopeless, if you are a student of history like I am, you understand that this country, this experiment, has went this and up and down and around, and there's been dark days. And I mean, we pulled out of a civil war. We have pulled out of the worst economic depression that modern times had seen in 1929 through 1939.
Yep.
I mean, this country's seen a lot and overcome it.
People who bet against America have lost a lot of money. So don't bet against America.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to happen without action.
Right.
And that's one of the things is that you realize in the military sometimes when there's a decision, you got to act. And my wife and I, again, earlier this year, as hard as it has been in our family and will continue to be, pales in comparison to the sacrifice that others made. But it's time to act. Yeah. It's time to act and move us forward as a country. Stop with the left versus right. Forward. Yeah. We need to move forward.
Yeah. I view America, I always say, what a country. And I mean that in every respect. That some snotty-nosed young punk from Big Falls, Minnesota, who grew up in a, my parents divorced when I was young, and trouble was always just around the corner. Yeah. And in this country, I have been able to live the life of dreams.
Yeah.
And I want that to be the future for everybody. Yeah. And that's why I'm always, as much as I might get frustrated, and the audience is like, Newberg, you're pretty pissed off today. I might be frustrated and pissed off because I'm so hopeful and I know what the opportunities are.
And if you're not a little pissed off, you're not paying attention.
Right.
I mean, but that doesn't mean being pissed off doesn't mean you're hopeless.
No.
Because this country, you said it, this country can sustain a lot, right? Yeah. We talked about this, the revolution itself, 8 years. I mean, we think, like, again, the revolution, that wasn't won overnight. No. Think about Washington at Valley Forge.
Right.
He was out of money. He's got troops that are barely can't eat, that they're freezing.
Yeah.
And it's like, we got through that. We got through the Civil War. We got through World War II. We've gotten through the Depression. So many things. The one thing we can't survive is a loss of hope.
Yeah.
And a loss of optimism, and that sense of betting on our future. And so that's where I appreciate about you. It's like, you can be pissed off.
Yeah.
I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
But I'm also hopeful.
Yeah.
And I believe in our ability to move forward as a country.
Yeah. I'd say the more opportunity I see squandered, the greater my frustration level. And I just know that this experiment can continue and be such an amazing life for all Americans. We just got to work hard at it. That's the one thing that those who came before us weren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work.
And you got to go. There's going to be naysayers.
Yeah.
In fact, my old chief warrant officer on my special forces team, came over, gave me a gift a couple years ago. I wore it today. It's a belt buckle with our old 2nd Battalion 1st Special Forces Group motto, and an illegitimi non carborundum.
What does that mean?
It's like kind of dog Latin for "Don't let the bastards get you down." And running as an independent, I was like, I wore this today because you take some flack.
Yeah.
But I just got to tell myself, don't let the bastards get you down.
Yeah.
You gotta keep moving forward. Yeah. And I am optimistic about this future. I think what people have said, running as an independent, it's impossible. I tell you what has been called impossible is increasingly becoming inevitable. But it is going to take us collectively saying enough's enough. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, you got to have a website. What's it, Seth?
Yeah, SethForMontana.com. So SETHFOR for Montana.com. Check it out. So, we've got some positions up there, and
I was out reading them. You got a pretty long position statement.
We've got a lot out there, and it's but that's important. I want to talk about issues.
Right.
It's the thing. When you have a label, it's like, hey, well, he's a Republican. He must mean this. He's a Democrat. Must mean this. When you're an independent, you say, okay, well, here's what I'm for.
Yeah.
This is what I'm about. And so check it out. We'll be putting more up there, and we'll be getting around the state. For those of your listeners in Montana, I'd love to have you out at some of our events. They'll be on the events page. We're going to show up in every nook and cranny of this state, talking to folks, hearing their perspective, sharing our values, but also learning. And I've learned a lot already, and I want to continue to learn. So this is about engagement, and like I said, showing up.
Well, thanks for being here, Seth. Appreciate it. Best
I appreciate
of luck.
the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
sir.